It's great to have you here on this lovely evening here in India. And today we're going to be looking at the future of leading people and culture. Hi, my name is Craig Johns. I'm the CEO and Managing Partner of Speakers Institute Corporate. And it's a real treat to fly in from Australia overnight. And so we were there in Melbourne all last week. We did a showcase there working with clients. It's getting pretty cold. And so it was nice to fly in. And this is my first time in India, really just enjoyed the warmth and the connectedness of people and the hospitality that I have received, whether it was in Mumbai or in Bangalore today. So thank you very much. It's a real treat to be here. Today we're going to dive into what the future of leading people and culture is all about. But we'll get a chance to look at it from more of a high level, but also showcase to you some different aspects of our curriculum and the way that we deliver things to help support how different companies can lead in their new people and culture as we shift into a new way of working. And everyone thinks there's been a lot of disruption over the past 2 years. Well, I'm here to tell you it hasn't. It's only just started. The next 2 years are going to be even more disrupted than what you just had. The world is shifting. We're seeing inflation go through the roof. We now have wars. We now have people trying to figure out, wow, it's going to cost me more to commute to work now. I've got to pay for car parking. Who's going to look after my children? So the thoughts and the different ideas and the ways of thinking of our employees have changed. Even our way of doing things. What we've been able to do over the last 2 years has been quite phenomenal. But now we have a great opportunity to really look at that and take it even further as we try and understand how we can build those cultures when we have such a disrupted workplace. And we're going to get to a point where people actually go, you know what? We've had all three places together. We've had the workplace, the home place. We've also had our third space all together at home. And that's all good for 2 years. I can tell you from experience, when you get into year 3 and year 4, that's when you really understand, can I manage all those three together? Or do I need some separation from work, even though it's a bit of a pain having to commute, but do I need that separation? But also, where's my third space? Where can I separate from my home life, from my work life, to actually have some space for me to, whether it be exercise, whether it be to free the mind, whether it be do other activities, and enjoy life in a different way? So we're going to have to think about that a little bit more. And as employees and as leaders, how do we manage that? Now, over the last few centuries, we had a very business-centric way of working. It was all focused around the business. How much profit can we get? How big can we get? How can we dominate the market? But then the last sort of decade, we have seen the shift towards client centricity. How can we build our services and products to support the needs and the desires of our clients? How can we be more client centric? And as we went through that last decade, we started fusing more human centricity. How can we be there more for the human? But now we have a massive domination of employee centricity. And business centricity and human centricity and client centricity are really small little bubbles. And then we've got this massive employee centricity. Now, don't get me wrong, we needed it, but it's a problem. The workplace ecosystem is going to really struggle if we maintain this huge employee centricity and we aren't able to balance that human centricity, that client centricity, and that business centricity. The bubble will burst. So how can we manage this? These are big things that we've got to think about because we can't just go, all right, we're going to squish that employee centricity It ain't going to work. They're going to leave really fast. And as we've known, people are moving to different organizations for things. So what do people want now? What do employees want? What do leaders want? What have people realized over the past couple of years? They want freedom. They want a sense of purpose. Not only their own purpose, but they want to understand, how do I fit in the purpose of the company? They also are looking for collaboration. People like to do things with other people. How many successful people in this world, or business in this world, have been done by one person? No successful athlete has done it by themselves. It requires collaboration and different thoughts and ideas to actually lead forward. And people enjoy collaborating. So how can we do that in the remote working world? But most importantly, as employees, as people inside the organization, the thing that is most important, that has really shone through over the last couple of years, it's always been there. It's been simmering away, but it's finally risen to the surface. And that is the importance of a sense of belonging. People want to feel connected. How can you create that sense of belonging inside your organization? Now, someone pointed out to me before, and it's pretty hard to tell, that I come from New Zealand. And in New Zealand, in our Māori Aboriginal language, we have a word called whakapapa. And whakapapa means belonging. It's like an unbroken chain from our ancestors that intertwines like a piece of DNA and comes through to the current and then on to the future. And this unbroken chain, this DNA type way of being, includes everyone that we have has been there before. It's a piece of them. We can't remove that, and we shouldn't remove that. It's interwoven, and then with every DNA of not only our employees, but every person we interact with, what is that sense of belonging that we can create so that we can leave a lasting legacy for generations we never meet? How can we create that? That sense of belonging. It's crucial to culture going forward, and it's crucial to employees want to stay at your organization. If you want to be the employer of choice, you're going to need to capture those things such as freedom, such as purpose, such as collaboration, but most importantly, how do you bring that all together as a sense of belonging? It's a really important thing to take into consideration. Now, as leaders, we can't just create this sense of freedom and let everyone do what they like. You know, we've talked about flexible working and a flexible lifestyle and a flexible this, but what is crucial is we must have flexible boundaries. People do not operate without boundaries. Think about when you've got a young kid at school and you watch them, they get into trouble and they get more trouble and they keep going, they ride their bicycle further over bigger jumps until someone either gives them a hard line boundary or they find the boundary. Now, we don't want kids hurting themselves or going even further, and we don't want that with our employees. How can we create flexible boundaries where people know, okay, cool, there's the line when it comes to this behavior is appropriate or not. Here is the line when it comes to this is the way we collaborate and work together. But where's the flexibility and the freedom inside of them for them to express themselves while you still create boundaries? And it's important to talk to your employees about this and allow them to help you create flexible boundaries rather than totally flexible freedom. How can we create that space for them? Now, as leaders, it's important that we set a really, really important example of what is excellence or driving towards excellence. And it's important that we create what we would look at as your gravity of leadership. Now, is your gravity of leadership a gravitational push or a gravitational pull? in the way you lead, the way you act, the way you behave, the way you interact? Is that pushing people away? Or is that like a magnet and creating a gravitational pull towards you? How can you create that gravitational pull in towards you? Sorry, I just thought that disappeared. The light changed. And so it's important we understand that. Now, when we look at your gravity of leadership, it's important that we have a relentless approach to our leadership. How can we have a relentless approach to striving for excellence and the way that we're going? How can we have that undeniable commitment towards it? Now, it's not so much a commitment that we keep going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's far from that, and I'll go a little bit deeper shortly. But when we are relentless in the pursuit of excellence, we must do it without being ruthless or reckless. How can we be relentless without being ruthless or reckless? I'll let that just sit with you for a moment. Who in this room likes tennis? A couple of tennis players. Who in this room knows Roger Federer? Rafa Nadal? Novak Djokovic? Okay, all right. We'll start with a sport analogy, and then we'll go into a business one. So if we think about it, all three of them, up until this year, had won 20 Grand Slams. And now Nadal has one more. He's got 21. So amazing human beings. It's an amazing era for sport to see those three. Now, if we look at all three, they are relentless in their pursuit of being the best they can be in tennis. If we look at Federer, he is relentless, but he's not ruthless or reckless about the way he goes about it. So he's relentless in making sure that when he practices and prepares, his focus is on when he's at the tennis court. But when he's off, he's with his family. He is interacting in other aspects of life. He is not there just for himself all the time and that 100% focus on tennis. He knows he needs some time to recover and take away. He used to be a little bit reckless when he was young. He used to smash tennis rackets, and he was a tantrum boy when he was young, but he's grown into that space of being able to deliver performance without being ruthless or reckless. Now we look at Nadal. Relentless. He's got undeniable dedication, devotion to tennis, but he's also got some ruthless aspects where he's not too worried about how it affects other people in a way, and he will focus. He goes through a routine every time that's quite annoying for people where he pulls his shorts and he brushes his nose and he pulls his hair back, and he does it every single time. Now for him, he's okay with it, but that ruthless aspect where he pushes the time really annoys people. And then there's Novak Djokovic. Extremely driven for high performance. He has cold water spas, he has physios, he has nutritionists, all sorts coming with him everywhere he goes. He is probably thinks about the most important detail in recovery there ever is in high performance. But he's ruthless. He takes no prisoners, and he's reckless. He doesn't care that if he travels unvaccinated to Australia, that he might give COVID to everyone else, and he may affect the whole system by trying to be above the world. So why can't he just be like Roger Federer? Why can't he just be relentless in that pursuit of excellence without being ruthless and reckless? All right, let's go into the corporate world. Who knows Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, on that board of Amazon. Relentless in her pursuit of ensuring that PepsiCo went from just being another drink kind of company to being an amazing global brand again. But she wasn't ruthless or reckless. I'm not sure if you know, but she actually visited every single parent of her 20 executives, went to their home and said, thank you for creating an amazing human being that gets to do incredible work with us at PepsiCo. Incredible. Then you get someone like Steve Jobs, and the late Steve Jobs. He was, at the end, very relentless in his pursuit of developing an amazing product in Apple, but he was very ruthless in the way that he would conduct himself. He wasn't so much reckless, although if you go back in his past, early days, he certainly was. And now you get Elon Musk. He's all three. His teenage kids don't talk to him. He's on to his third marriage. He is extremely relentless, ruthless, and reckless. So let's have a look at what these actually are. So relentless is the non-stop commitment to achieving something. But when we go into ruthless, it's about taking no prisoners. Come with me. We're going 100 miles no matter what you think or how much time you have. We're going to do this. And then when it gets to reckless, we are careless of consequences. In your leadership, in your role, in the area you work in, how can you be relentless in the pursuit of success and excellence without being ruthless or reckless? Tonight, as I mentioned before, we're going to take you through some different aspects. We're going to have some panels, some different sessions as we look at the different aspects of the future of leading people and culture. We're not going to cover everything. We only have a short period of time tonight, but we will discuss some different aspects. And you will get opportunity to ask questions throughout, so please do. Please share those questions. But we're also going to show you a little different side as well around our corporate training. So for us, we do a team corporate facilitating style of training. We go very deep into organizations. We don't like to take anything off the shelf. We like to bespoke it for the different companies we're working with. We want to understand your culture. We want to understand your problems. We want to make sure we co-create things with you. And we have a team of 35 across 5 different countries. And we're working in 50 different countries around the world over the past couple of years. And so we'll be doing some training here on the ground, just down the road later this week with a big tech company. And we're looking forward to taking what we do online to now putting that into person as we come out of COVID as well, which is really exciting. But to kick off our first session tonight, we're actually going to bring in someone who's not here in the room. We're going to Zoom someone in from Australia. This person has written 11 books, 5 New York Best Time Sellers. He is the business partner with myself in owning Speakers Institute Corporate. He has spoken on some of the world's largest stages, including with the likes of Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, and the Dalai Lama, and a few other incredible people. I would like to welcome to you an amazing human being from Tasmania, Australia. Put your hands together and please welcome Mr. Sam Cawthorn.
Thank you very much. Just give me a thumbs up that you guys can hear me okay. Yes, very, very good. Craig, you certainly got a very good-looking group of people there in Bangalore, and I'm really sorry I can't be there with you. It's just after 12 midnight here in Australia, but I'm really excited about being with you all there today. And today I'm going to share with you a couple of areas just in and around resilience, overcoming, and obviously, you know, what we're seeing globally right now, and really reiterate what Craig was saying is, yes, there is actually a lot of anxiety, particularly when it does come to return to work and the like. So I'm going to be talking about ultimately how we all need to make better decisions. Now, I love this word decision, right? Or the word decide. Get this. The word decision comes from the Latin word decerre, you know, incision. Get this. Scission means to cut, yeah? And the word decide, you know, suicide, pesticide, the word side means to kill. So get this, the dictionary meaning of the word decision means to cut off and kill. And I love that. And I think sometimes leaders, we love keeping our options open. Why? Because we love sitting on the fence. But today, I'm actually going to share with you just a number of stories of where I needed to make decisions as well. Now, as you can see, I do have dark skin. It's actually because my mum, she's actually Bengali. She was born in West Bengal. They're in Kolkata. whereas I was born here in Australia. But I absolutely love being back there in India. I do come over there around 4 times every year, but unfortunately I'm not there now, but I'm going to be there in Mumbai next week with Craig and my team, which is really, really super cool. However, I'm going to share with you a really awesome story. And this story here is actually about when I won this award. It was the Young Australian of the Year. So it was one of the highest awards. Actually, it was the highest award in the whole of Australia. And on Australia Day, they flew me through to the capital of Australia, there in Canberra. And I'm about to meet the Australian Prime Minister. His name was Kevin Rudd at the time. But I'm thinking to myself, what is a decision that I need to do in order for the Australian Prime Minister to remember me? Because as you know, probably the Australian Prime Minister probably meets hundreds of people every day as if they remember everyone that they meet. So I had one of my prosthetic arms on. Now, as you can see, I have a story, clearly. I think we all have stories, but I've got a story, and I'll share with you a little bit more about what that is, about how I had a major car accident a few years ago. But on this particular day, when I went to meet the Australian Prime Minister, I had one of my prosthetic arms on. And I've got different type of prosthetic arms. I've got a bionic arm. I've got a swimming arm. Actually, I've got the most advanced bionic arm in the world right now. It is the only one in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's worth over 120,000 US. Actually, I've got 8 arms all up. Seriously, how many arms do you have? Anyway, I'm wearing my cosmetic arm on the day I met the Australian Prime Minister, and Glenn McGrath, Adam Gilchrist, a few other really famous Australians were there. So I walked up to the Australian Prime Minister. Again, he didn't notice at all that I had a prosthetic arm because it was a cosmetic arm. It looks exactly the same as my normal hand. So when I went over to the Prime Minister and I went to shake his hand, I detached my hand and my hand came off into his hand. And so Glenn McGrath, Adam Gilchrist, they just started cracking up laughing. The world's media came in taking photos, and the Prime Minister of Australia is just standing there holding my hand. And in his Australia Day speech, the Prime Minister of Australia, he said, look, today we're surrounded by very significant Australians. We have Aboriginal elders, we have community leaders, we have sports heroes. But nothing can ever beat the intro I had to Sam this morning. Because when you meet Sam, it's an extraordinary experience. Because when you shake his hand, he'll leave his hand in your hand. And the Australian Prime Minister, in his Australia Day speech, then looked over to me and he goes, and thanks, Sam, I'm still recovering from therapy today. It was a very funny moment, that's for sure. But I think we all have moments in our life. And some moments can be quite funny and quite hilarious, and we'll never forget those moments. But then other moments can be quite life-defining and life-challenging. Actually, just before I share with you these moments, I just wanted to show you a photo that this really did happen there with the Prime Minister. So as you can see, there's Adam Gilchrist there in the background. There's the PM's wife, Therese. She's just lost it, right? And literally the Prime Minister of Australia is just handing me back my hand. It was certainly a very funny moment. But this word, whenever we do have moments, the word is called kairos. Now, kairos is the Greek word for time. So contrasting to chronos or chronological time, kairos time is laden with meaning and choice. So get this, the dictionary meaning of the word kairos is this, is a moment within a moment, a particular moment in where drastic change takes place. I'll say that again. Kairos moments are moments within a moment, a particular moment in where drastic change takes place. My kairos moment happened a few years ago. I had a major car accident. The police said it was a 206-kilometre head-on collision with a semi-trailer truck. And it was my fault. I fell asleep and I veered over the other side of the road. For those people that have been fortunate enough to travel to Australia or even driven in Australia, you would know that there's long, straight, open roads. And you might be driving for about 3 or 4 hours and not see a single car on the road. And so for me, I was driving along, put my car on cruise control. I fell asleep behind the wheel and I veered over the other side of the road and I had this kairos moment. My arm was ripped off my body, 6 broken ribs, lacerated liver, punctured kidney. The doctors, they said I'll never be able to walk ever again. But you know what's really interesting? One thing I realized that whenever we have tough times, whenever we have a crisis or an adversity, or even right now, when we're in the middle of this post-pandemic new normal, I have found that it's actually not about going back to where we've been. And even though my rehabilitation team, their entire focus for me was to get me back to that same job, something had changed, right? Not only physically, but also emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. I was no longer focused to be the person that I used to be. And so what I needed to then do, I needed to bounce forward, learn from the crisis and not bounce back to where we've been, but more bounce forward into what we can become. So here, guys, I just want to share with you just 3 things that really helped me to bounce forward. These 3 things. And my encouragement to you right now is to write these down, because I've now shared these 3 things in stages all around the world. Just in the last 12 months alone, I've shared with over 1 million people and shared the stage with Michelle Obama and even Simon Sinek. So write this down because it will really help you. The first thing that really helped me to bounce forward after my car accident was this: mastering communication for influence. And this here is all about speaking confidently in front of people. My doctor said that after my car accident, now that I can't use 2 hands, I've only got 1 hand, he said, Sam, it's no longer about your physical ability. He said it's now about your mental ability. And he said one of the greatest things that you can learn is how to communicate with confidence and speak well in front of people. And so I added then and influence other people as well. And as leaders and as presenters and as people that wants to win people's attention, and with our attention spans now shorter than any other time in history, they say a human being attention span is anywhere between 7 to 9 seconds, shorter than a goldfish. But some of the latest research now says that human being attention spans are now 3 seconds. Seriously, social media are now giving analytics to digital marketers for anyone at all that has viewed your post 3 seconds or longer. Do you know why? Because of this. Ready? Scroll, scroll, scroll. The average human being scrolls 2 miles a day. So what do we need to do to win people's attention and ultimately influence them? And this is where I needed to upgrade my communication, master communication for influence. And so for this, that was one of the key ingredients for me to be a better leader in tomorrow's world. The second thing, let's write this one down. Story trumps information. Story trumps information. The key ingredient to my miraculous rehabilitation after my car accident is actually me choosing a different career path. And it was very organic. After my car accident, a local school asked me to share my story. So I just shared my story, how I overcame adversity, and then another school, and then another school. And before you knew it, I was actually then speaking close to 10 times every week, just sharing my story. And I realized us as human beings, we're hardwired through narrative. This is why we love going to the movies, why we love reading novels, and why us human beings, we've been shared stories through generations. And now over the last few years, over the last 10 years, we've started to bring these stories into our everyday professional lives. And we've realized that in order to win people's mind and hearts is by sharing narrative, is by communicating through a story. One of my books is actually called Story Showing. And I believe there is a real interesting shift when it does come to story, because an average storyteller will inform. That's where a lot of education stops. A good storyteller will persuade. This is where a lot of sales stop. A great storyteller will inspire. I love inspiration. I go to the latest Marvel movie and I watch Doctor Strange and I'm inspired by that, yeah? But inspiration will not necessarily lead to action. There has to be a shift. And to be quite honest, I believe the shift is in and around this word tell. Because we're sick and tired of people telling us what to do. It's true, isn't it? We're at home and our parents tell us what to do. We're in school and our teachers tell us what to do. We're in the workplace now and our bosses tell us what to do. Then all of a sudden we're told to be storytellers. And the shift started to happen around 7 years ago when everyone sort of started saying, we need to use more visual storytelling. But we're still using this word tell. Now, let me share with you something. If I said, let me tell you something, compared to me saying, let me show you something, yeah, it lands totally different to the listener. I've suddenly gone from head to head, now more heart to heart, which then begs the question. An excellent story shower will transform. Now, what is transformation? Transformation means that I've been informed, I've been persuaded, I've been inspired, but now I'm ready to take action. But this isn't the tipping point. One thing that we can teach people is how to transcend people's thinking. Because what true transcendence is giving them an outer body experience, giving them a sense of timelessness. And this is where the future of story is. We're really excited about how to transcend others' ways of thinking. So ultimately, they won't only catch that information, but that'll evoke emotion and that'll transform them so they take action. So again, just recapping, the first thing that really helped me to bounce forward was master communication for influence. The second thing that really helped me was learning that story trumps information, and ultimately how can we show that story and not just tell the story. And the last thing that really helped me was this: people follow people. Write this one down. People follow people. Now, this is a really, really interesting one. One thing I love about this is what we're now seeing is what we call the profile economy, where we no longer trust brands, companies, logos, organizations, but we're now trusting human beings. And my encouragement to you, as you build your profile out there in the marketplace, in the workplace, realize that ultimately, if you can build my trust, I will listen to what you have to say. And one of the greatest ways to build your trust with other people is actually opening a wound, being vulnerable, and building your own personal profile, allowing people to know who you truly are. That is how we build trust as leaders in tomorrow's world, which is really cool. I want to finish off just very quickly with one more story. Now, the story here is actually of my mum. Now, this is my beautiful mum, born in Kharagpur, which is obviously there where IIT is, and the world's largest railway platform there, just 2-3 hours out of Kolkata, as a Bengali. And she married my father, who's a Scotsman, and we're all born here in Australia. But this is my beautiful mum, and her name is Annie. And I love my mum to bits, and she is one of the most caring, one of the most beautiful things in my life. Yet, as we know, things don't always go according to plan. We can plan to go in one direction, but life situations, life circumstances, like we've seen in the last 2 years, will go in a complete different direction. And it was very unfortunate, but last year, My mum, she actually passed away. She died. And it was one of the most saddest things for me ever to lose my mum. And she was only 76 years old. And yes, there's a time for grieving. Yes, there's a time for sadness. But there's also a time for us to pick ourselves up, for us to dust ourselves off, and not just bounce back to where we've been, but more bounce forward into what we can become. So I wanted to really encourage you. What was your kairos moment? What was that moment within a moment that had drastic change in your life? And did you bounce back from that, or did you actually bounce forward? And one thing that has really helped me all throughout my years is to realize that, yes, I can't change the past. I can't change the past, but what I can do is to create a brand new future. I truly believe that our greatest days are ahead of us because of this. The best is yet to come.
Very
Thank
good.
you very much, and it's lovely to talk to you all.
Very good. Let's give Sam Cawthon a big round of applause here in Tasmania. Thank you, Sam. What an amazing impression Sam Cawthon makes. And as leaders and people in the work, are a leader worth following. And our impressions, not just our first impressions, but our lasting impressions are so important, so crucial. And as you move up higher in the ranks, inside your organization, inside your communities, the importance of executive impressions gets even higher. I'm going to introduce to you a wonderful human being based here in Bangalore. She was voted in the top 10 most promising soft skills trainers in 2020. She's a communications expert, one of our favorite facilitators. Please welcome to speak on executive impressions, Juvie Alex.
Thank you so much, Craig, and welcome everyone. Today we all have gathered to just understand how can we be the leaders who lead the change, its cultural change, the change in people. We are talking about the executive impressions. Each one of you here are leaders. And you know your matter so well. You are experts in what you do. And in this section, can we try to elevate ourselves to the next level when we are discussing about executive impressions? Why is it needed? Because we are leading people. And when it's about leading people, it includes trust. It includes credibility. How do we show up? Today, as we enter this hall, most of you are unknown to each other. It's a networking event. What was your executive impression? What is that we created today? If we discuss this, it's not only about the formal presentations that we have with our clients, with the team meetings. No, it's even one-to-one. And why are we discussing this and stressing on this? Because we need leaders who have great executive presence. And who are the ones who have it? It's with executive impressions. Because impressions last. Impressions last. As we move forward, let's also realize if we believe it or if we accept it or not, but we all are walking logos. Logos of our professional brands, the personal brands. How many of you agree with me? Yes, yes, yes. Because the clients whom we discuss, because the team we discuss with, for them, we are the brand. So how are we showing up? Are we showing up with authority? How is our presence? How is our image? And that is what we are going to learn here. as I'm going through this, as I will be going on with this slide, I just want you all to just imagine that one leader or one person whom you trust and you want to follow. I hope each one of you have got that one person. And now just think, what about him or her makes you trust him? Makes you follow him in whichever direction he or she is asking you to follow? If this question was asked to me, and if I'm thinking about that leader, there are 3 aspects that I am discussing. It's about how are they controlling their body? How is the clarity in their voice? And how are they managing their breathing? So are we getting into understanding this in depth? Are we with me? Let's move on. When we are talking about executive impressions, it's body, voice, and breathing. Let's start with the first one. I have segregated here with what are the don'ts and what are the do's. Most of us, when we stand or when we step into to interact or introduce ourselves to someone, how is our body moving? Are we swinging and swaying? And this is happening unconsciously. This does happen. And what does it do? Instead of doing it, we will be moving on to it. Are we having a lot of movement? Too much of a movement when we are describing something or we are saying something? Are we a lot of animated? And then, lack of control of body. The hand gestures. We are just throwing off hands, not knowing what to do with it, but not realizing this is about the functional gestures that we have to bring in so that we use our hands. It's not to be used every time. And let's go to the do's. Stand tall, straight, upright. When we enter into that room of whoever may be, what is their image of you? What is their image of you? And when we look like a leader, that's when we feel like a leader. Stand tall, be straight. And this is not only for the face-to-face interactions, but it is also valuable for when we have those online conversations where most of us, we have been dealing all the meetings through Zoom. But what was our impression there? Did we lose it? Did we frame ourselves into that virtual screen space? Or did we lose our impression? Next is about less movement. That brings in credibility. And then we move on. Radiate confidence. Your body radiates confidence. And when you feel confident, the people whom you interact with, they are inspired. Let's move on to the next aspect. And that's about the voice. How many of you are aware of when you give the presentations or when you are discussing or talking to someone, do you have a low voice? Do you just whisper? Do you have a monotonous voice during all those sessions or presentations that you make? Or do you bring in some variations? It's so very important. It's about self-awareness. And that's why I encourage each one of you to take this time and have these tips and techniques with you for the next presentation of yours. Because you may feel that this is all common sense. It's not something that we have not learned. But let me tell you, from the last 2 to 3 years that we as a team has worked with so many large corporates, we see that the basics have been lost. And that's the reason we are emphasizing on it. So what comes in voice? Do not rush. Be slow and steady. Using filler words. Most of us have that, yes. And then it comes for mumbling. Are we articulating our words properly? And let's move on to the do's for this. Have variation. Next is when you feel like you're using a lot of filler sounds, if you video yourself and see, please measure how you are talking and take good pauses instead of those filler words and filler sounds. And then talk with authority. When you have some serious discussions to be made, serious points to be highlighted, bring in that voice. Let's not mumble, because that doesn't allow the other person to understand what you are saying. And this is about the body and voice. And now if we describe about breathing, it's about influencing yourself first. Before each and every presentation, if I can encourage each one of you to control your breathing, because that's a time when we are nervous, we get anxious, especially when we have such networks, events. That's where we have to ensure that we breathe deep and then speak from that point. You will see the difference. I hope you had lots of notes in this section. Okay, you have a question? Oh yes, I think we as a team, we are doing that and helping and elevating. I'm sure we are going to answer this in the sections coming thereafter. And for this, one tip I'll give you is breathing. Take your time to breathe. Be there for a few seconds and then go answering. Let's not rush. And I'm sure we will be addressing it in our sessions as we go forward. But now this is a session where we will have a panel discussion with the experts here. Craig, the CEO of Speakers Institute Corporate. We have Vanita, one of the foremost facilitators at SIC, who takes care of emotional intelligence. Welcome.
Thank you.
And now we are here not only to discuss about how we are responding to this culture change with a flexible working environment. And that's why we have them to put forward their views. And please make sure you have your questions written. You will have time to ask. So Craig, let me start with you. What exactly do culture mean to you?
It's a great question. And when we look at culture inside organizations, quite often people are looking to see how can it be established by a leader who just states, here's the culture, come with me. But we know that inside the organizations, there's so many different aspects that come into play and that the employees have a big part of it. For me, I've steered away from this tradition of having values. And I don't think values actually create culture. The word value in people's minds subconsciously takes them to, what do I value in life? Now, everyone values different things depending on their environment. So to bring people in and go, here, you must fit into these 5 values, subconsciously doesn't always work, and most of the time doesn't. We can't force people to change their values inside a workplace based on what they've known in their entire environment. So for me, I think you need to be able to separate and understand what is the DNA of the company. I spoke about it a bit earlier in the gravity of leadership. What is the DNA? And it is around the things of the way we do things around here, the way we behave around here, the way the boundaries we create, the way we want to respond to things. And now I know some people might sit up and go, the way we do things around here, we don't like that. that holds it. But it's about being open in that space to the way we do things around here. Because that's what culture is. It brings it in. Now, if people aren't immersed to that and they're coming into the organization in a flexible working world, it's a little bit different to bring that in. So we're now going to shift in the way we do things around here. It's shifting very fast. So as leaders, how can we lean in and understand from the employees how they want the behaviors to shift while you create those flexible boundaries we spoke about earlier? Create the boundaries, but then let them have some freedom to establishing what are those behaviors and the way we do things in each area. I think it's starting to shift towards that.
That's a profound insight about culture. Vanita, next to you.
Sure.
As you discuss, as you meet so many leaders around, what are the exact strategies or changes that they are brought in, especially after these 2 to 3 years where we were into the pandemic situation? What are those aspects that you have observed?
Thank you, Jovi, and hello, everyone. I think this last 2 years working with global leaders across, sitting in my home in Bangalore, is first of all been enlightening. When it comes to culture, Jovi and Craig, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I have predominantly noticed in most of the large corporates is the power of listening. In fact, I was working with one of the clients in Nepal, Australia. They have both the places. Until then, everything was business driven. You drive everything with numbers. Every conversation of yours in the morning meeting would start with what's a number, what are you doing, how's the day going, what are you going to get end of the day? And here there was a huge paradigm shift where the leaders, at one point of time, I designed this session for them where the whole idea was, can we just listen to you? And the CEO of the organization and the head of HR just didn't speak a word in the entire 1 hour. And all they did was just listen to their employees who were speaking. And for me personally, that was a huge culture shift where predominantly most of the time you see leaders speak. Like how Sam said, you tell. And here, the absolute 1 hour, all they did was just listen. So that is something that I'm seeing in many of the organizations. In fact, I'm also having leaders reaching out saying, can you take us through the power of listening? And it's amazing that how we have 2 years and we use it so less. The second strategy that I'm also finding in culture is understanding people. So there have been a lot of focus group discussions happening at the ground level, then pulling in to the senior level. So if you actually see, it's just no more in the boardroom that gets decided on the culture, but actually culture is driven from the ground level. So it's no more the top-down approach, rather it is the bottom-up approach where people get to listen and understand what is that you consider as culture. That's a huge shift. And Julie, I can just go on. Well, I think, post the talk, we will have a talk out and maybe we can catch up with a little more strategies as well.
Yeah.
Just can I go on? I think that's really important. You brought up something about the listening. And it's part of that sense of belonging, right? People want to feel heard. They want to know that people care about the work that they do and who they are matters. And they want to feel respected. And I think that active listening and being able to create those spaces has been lost over the last couple of years in remote spaces where we've gone, okay, we need to reduce the size of meetings. We don't want people online as long. But what they didn't realize is they took away the spaces where people could connect and feel heard. And we've ended up in a lot of times where we create these spaces that are so structured in a way that doesn't enable everyone to have their voice heard.
Yeah.
And that part is where people feel that sense of belonging. When can they feel heard?
Yeah.
And I'm going to disrupt diversity and inclusion. Inclusion's been talked about as being, how do we include gender? How do we include age? How do we include race? We can actually solve this by going to the unknown problem here. And that is just, how do we ensure that everyone feels included in this world? Think back to a time when you were a young kid at school, or a moment in your life where you felt excluded from something. Was it something that someone said? Was it the way a group behaved and left you to the side? This is where inclusion's moving. If we're still talking about race and gender and age right now, we are 20 years behind the diversity and inclusion conversation. We need to be shifting into what is the inclusive language? What is the inclusive opportunities to ensure people are heard? What are the ways that we can, I suppose, get people to reflect and understand when they may accidentally be excluding people. We don't realize we're doing it. But it is so important. That aspect of diversity and inclusion. I could go on about diversity for a while as well, but I'm not going to.
No, totally.
I'll leave it there.
I think this was needed, and this is the discussion we are having. And as we move forward, this is just one question from you, Craig. Most of you HR leaders out here, I'm sure you would have faced so many challenges when it comes to bringing in a culture change. So when you started talking to these executives, especially during these 2 years, what were their challenges like?
So a couple of different things. The first one was when we've got new graduates coming into the organization who have recently graduated out of university, how do we get them to build their social experience? Because if you think about it, a lot of them have graduated university where they were probably living at home. They're now still living at home because of remote working. They're in these spaces where they go into companies where generally they're still very, 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 very junior. So they don't get their voice heard very often. So they haven't had many social interactions. So when you bring them in person or put them in front of clients, how do you expect them to interact in those environments when you haven't created them for them? Or they haven't created them for themselves? So that whole, how do we build that social experience and make sure people don't feel awkward when they come back into the office and feel even more separated from those that have been in the organization for a really, really long time. You think about it, those that have been in your organization for 10 years, they will come straight back in and fit right in. But those who have only been around, or only just arrived, are going to find it really difficult to fit in if they're still lacking that social experience. The second one is obviously now, how do we understand the balance of kind of that employee flexibility to building the culture? How do we create a way that everyone feels connected, even though some people may always be in the office or in the front line, whereas others can be at home however they like, wherever they like? How do we marry those two together? And I think that's a big challenge, and I don't have an answer for you, and I think it will be very different in each organization. But how do we connect those together is probably the second one. And then the third one is we've got all this space. Now, how do we create new spaces inside our buildings so that when people do come back, they're able to collaborate? How they're able to connect and create that sense of belonging? Rather than just creating, oh, cool, where can we put gadgets? All right, let's put hot stations here, which are quite annoying for people because they can't find the right cable all the time. But how can we create those collaboration spaces are the bigger topics that are happening as they build that culture coming back.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. And this all summarizes people first. Yeah, it's becoming a topic of how belonged we feel to this place where we are working. So as I just move on, is there any question you would like to ask in regards to responding to culture change? Yes, please.
My name is Kaushik.
I'll start off here.
Okay.
You can't remove it. People are competitive. People want to move up the ladder, and as they move up the ladder, people will try to, find their way to get in. And sometimes that goes into a negative space where we will sideline someone to get ourselves into a better position. I'm not sure we can ever remove that. Obviously, we want to create as many collaboration sort of way of working and et cetera as we can, but there is going to be competition. So I don't think we can remove it. I think it is obviously some greater education at the higher level around how they can role model behaviors and look at ways that we can help people be recognized and rewarded and grow within inside an organization without having to take out someone else. There's no simple answer to that, I don't think. And we have a competitive nature as human beings. How can we avoid that when people want to rise up the ranks? I'm not sure I know the answer to that one.
The other thing which I have been seeing when it comes to
I think from the diversity point of view as well, very much like the inclusion. If you're still talking about gender diversity, race diversity, age diversity in your organization, you're 20 years behind. And give an example with both Speakers Institute, which is a sister company to Speakers Institute Corporate. They deal with personal development. We deal with professional development. Both Sam and I are known for employing or recruiting contractors that are like no one else in the organization. And that is on diversity of thought, diversity of background. Have you lived in multiple countries? What industries have you worked in? What was life like growing up for you? Did you have it easy? Did you have it hard? Were you the trouble kid or were you the liked kid? And for us, we're always looking at different people. We've turned away amazingly talented people because they're like someone else on our team. And we know that we're not going to grow if we keep bringing in like-minded people. For me, for whatever reason, I actually lean my ear towards people that agitate me. Because I want to know why they think that way. What have they caught? I don't know. That's how I like to live because that's how I get better. I always cringe when I see someone at a conference who goes, I don't like that person, and walks out. Oh, wait, you've just missed out on a great opportunity to learn. It may help you understand why you think a certain way even more. That's okay. But if you walk away, you might miss something that helps you think in a different way and different perspective. And that's why that whole diversity of the people we put in our organizations and our teams is so crucial. Really, really important.
This is so great to know about these insights. I think you wanted to speak.
And I think this is something that is so, I was going to touch on it at the end, but I'll bring it forward now. In your organizations, how can you create tight feedback loops? Gone are the days of the 6-month, the 12-month performance reviews. Yes, they're still good to have, but if that's the only time you were talking about the performance of an individual, you're going to be so far away from what the truth is on that day, it's not funny. How can you create a tight feedback loop so you're giving feedback every single day to your employees, to your team members, to even yourself? How can you create that? So, and for something we do when we go and facilitate with different companies and do corporate training, and we do for ourselves, is we talk about gems and opportunities. So gem is something you did really well, that might be 20%. Then you go into opportunities. What can you do better? And it's all about how you frame it. It's about taking it away from being a personal attack. So you did this, I saw you do this, you disappointed me this way, to what I noticed was, my encouragement to you is, have you ever tried this? So it's just changing that subtle shift of language. So it's not a personal attack. It's now situation off to the side. It's kind of like a 3-point communication in a way. It's a subtle way of doing that, where you separate the person from the area they can improve. And if you can do that every single day, then you're going to remove those huge conflicts, which are still important to have, but in the right way. Actually, for those who know French, who knows French? Anyone here? Confrontation. So confrontation probably here in India or in New Zealand or in Australia is it's butting heads. But in French, it is actually about a constructive debate. So at L'Oreal, you know, the famous cosmetic company, they actually have the confrontation room in France where you actually sit in the pit and everyone sits around you when you bring a new idea. And they will give you the gems and they will give you the opportunities, and it's pretty full on, but that's how they grow and develop great products. So you still need some conflict. You can't do that all the time. That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig and Manita. Thank you to all of you. This just shows that there are some really empathetic leaders seated here who really want to help out people, bringing in this culture change. Thank you for this discussion. Thank you, Craig.
Very good. Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Now, when you're thinking about culture and people and leading change in that space, because that's what it is, right? If you're looking at the future of people and culture, it's all about change. People will not be able to step forward and go with you when they cannot see it. You can give all the facts and figures in the world, But if they can't visualize it in their mind, if they can't paint a picture of what that future looks like, do you think they're going to come along with the ride with you? They're not. You think about when you make decisions in life, unless you can clearly see it in your mind, you're going to be hesitant or you're going to say no. So help us understand a tool that can help us visualize and paint that picture for what the future of leading people and culture can look like in your organizations. Please welcome to the stage, talking about the psychology of business storytelling and how to use a visualization story. I'm going to bring all the way from Hyderabad, Mr. Kartik Madugula.
So, Sam has already talked about how story trumps information. And I'm here to prove why that is the case. So he just made a statement. I will give you a full-blown proof on why that works that way. Okay? But before I get into that, I have one question. What do you think is the biggest gift that creation has given to human being, that it has given to no other species? Smile, yes. I think even monkeys smile, I've seen a few, but yes. What is the biggest gift? Sorry?
The choice.
The choice, free will, yes, that's 100% I agree with that. What else?
Language.
Imagination. That was the answer I was looking for. So imagination is what makes us very, very different to every other species. Like you think of a lion. How his great-great-great-grandfather lived is exactly how he lives today as well. Same thing, eat, procreate, and excrete. That's all. Same process keeps going on. But imagine how your great-great-grandfather lived and compare that to how you are living today. Big, big astronomical change. Only because of the capacity of imagination that human beings have. We are able to imagine a better future. We are able to imagine a better possibility for our companies, for our teams, for our clients. And we are able to materialize that on our way. And great stories spark great imaginations. But we often see many people around us who, at the sight of stories, they are like, I'm bored, don't tell me stories, come to the point already. We have met such people, yes? Can we all agree on that commonly? Yes? Just come to the point, don't tell me the story. But they are missing the whole point, and I'll tell you what exactly they are missing. Can we all agree that many people died with great ideas than as many people who have manifested that ideas in this world? Yes? Totally true? So, we are all able to imagine great things, but not all of us are able to actualize those things. So, where is the gap? And I'm here to show you where the gap is. Imagination to actualization. The first thing we start with is information. Okay, we all have a lot of information. We know exactly what is the right thing to do. We know exactly where to go, what to get, and what is the skill we need to get to our next levels. Even our majority of us here are HR leaders. So I'm assuming most of your employees are motivated to grow. And they imagine good things for themselves. Some of them may be doing visualization exercises and the likes. And they exactly know what to get, where to go, what kind of skills to gain, whom to talk to, what kind of projects to get. But still, we don't see as much growth in them or due to them in the organization. And the problem lies in the lack of relating or relationship with the task that we are doing. I'm a psychologist. I'll tell you a little bit about myself as I go, I guess, but I was counseling this 19-year-old boy, okay, and he was telling me all about how he's procrastinating, how he's not able to get things done, he has these big dreams, imaginations and everything, but nothing just comes to fruition. And then I asked him one question. I asked him, if your mother were to get into a situation of some kind of grave illness, and the hospital is charging a bomb, would you not go out on the streets, beg, borrow, steal, or whatever it takes, and facilitate the treatment process? And the answer that he gave was a resounding yes. The reason is because he has a relationship with his mother, the one that he doesn't have with his dreams and imaginations. And the reason why this relationship misses for majority of people is we just want to get to the point. We don't want to hear the stories. If you see any standard book, some 300 pages, right? Any standard book on the market. If you reduce the main points in that book, it's just one page. Isn't it? So the core concepts of that book in one page, really. Nothing more than that. But why do people still write 300-page books? Because they're telling us a lot of stories. They're showing us a lot of case studies. They are showing us a lot of examples of how it worked. And in all that process, we are relating with the idea that they are sharing. We are growing our relationship with the idea. And when we have information and relationship with the task that we are about to do, then we get into action. So great stories not just inform, but they relate people on the point of transformation and they get them to act eventually. True transformation lies in action. It doesn't lie in information. In fact, I believe that too much of information is indigestion. How many people would have spent enough time on Amazon trying to buy one product and you just can't make a decision? Because even for a diaper, there is hundreds of brands. So how are decisions getting made? How are actions being made eventually? Only through relating with stories, not through information, only through relating with stories. Maybe 10, 20, 25% information, but 75% story. And this I'm saying as one of the greatest proponent of logic myself. I'm a graduate in mechanical engineering from IIT Kharagpur. And now I'm a psychologist. So you can see how my scientific education would have made me believe in logic so much that it only led me to my own depression in life. Okay? And then it is stories that transformed me eventually. So maybe 20 to 25% information, but 70 to 75% stories. Because stories are what relate. If we don't have relationship with what we are trying to do, then we will not do it. It will become one of the things that we made as New Year resolutions, and the next year it's the same story again. The same is with our employees in our organizations. If they are not able to relate, to the organization, then they will not be able to do the things that they are supposed to do. So relating is very, very important. And some of the trainings that we have delivered as Speakers Institute Corporate in some of the major companies around here, the biggest challenge is to even get the camera on. Forget sharing a story. That's a far cry. Even getting the camera on in participation is the biggest challenge. And then sharing stories is the next level. But we've been able to successfully do that for many organizations, and the transformation is wonderful. So, since story is so much important that it can move the human race forward, it's not information that moves the human race forward. It's relation. It's story that relates, that moves the human race forward. Because only stories will lead to action. Information will only lead to indigestion. So, what is the difference between information and story? What is the simplest way we can think about a story? Whenever you want to share about a story, and if it shouldn't be just information but a story, there has to be a person with a name. So for example, I won't talk about Dexter Capital. I'll talk about Vijeta Shastri in Dexter Capital. If you want to inspire more people towards taking more action with your company, let us just say, okay, we have to talk about the story of Vijeta and not of Dexter Capital. Because do we connect so much with Dexter Capital as much as we connect with Vijeta? The answer is no. And I can show with a very simple example. So let us say I take XYZ company. It has gone through so much of growth, so many challenges, but A, B, C initiatives led to 30% profit increase versus I know Vivek who works in XYZ company, and Vivek was struggling with the lack of growth for himself and for the company that he's working for. And then Vivek worked with us on improving certain things. Now I want you to understand, Vivek was not able to even spend time with his family. He was working 16 hours a day, but still was not getting the results that he wanted. And finally, when he implemented our solution, his life changed forever. He now works 8 to 10 hours a day, has quality time with the family, gets more done, and is ultimately more productive. So, the story of a company or a story of a person? What felt better? Would you agree it's the person that we connect more with? We connect more with Vivek, we don't connect with XYZ company. Am I making sense here? Yes? Very good. So, if you're talking about a story and not a case study or some information, there has to be a person with a name inside that story. And I want to show you a small framework that we teach here, which we like to call as the visualization story. This is if, as HR leaders, you want to go out there, you want to, inspire your organizations to change the leadership culture and bring ideas of tomorrow into existence today. And maybe you can use this as a framework to talk to your organizations about the same. Okay. Step 1 in a visualization story is you describe the current situation. What is happening today? What is the state of affairs of today? And then you talk about the change that is happening right now and how what we are doing right now may be going obsolete. So you build some tension around that perhaps. And then you paint a picture using people. The best way to paint a picture using people is you start with the statement, imagine if. Imagine if people were able to present bad news easily. Imagine if leaders were able to inspire their subordinates to be on track with their duties. Imagine if communication became much more easier. Imagine if the leaders in our companies don't just remain leaders by position but become influencers out there so that they represent the brand image of our company. Imagine if. And you use a person to paint that picture. Imagine if Vivek could become a micro-influencer. Am I making sense? Yes. Imagine if. And there is a lot of such imagination that we have done as Speakers Institute Corporate, and we have created some amazing programs for the companies we have served, and our imaginations are today actualizations. And I'm very proud to be a part of this team, and with that I hand it back to Craig. Thank you so much.
So the power of being able to visualize what that future will look like through that person is so
Good job.
But what I'd like to do now is I'm going to bring Kartik back up, and I'm also going to introduce Anshul Junjunwala from Thane, who's going to come up as well. So Anshul, come on up. She's been a program manager for us and also a facilitator, and Kartik. And we're going to talk here a little bit around the future of corporate training and how that shifted, because when we're looking at the future of leading people and culture, we also need to be training people, and what may that look like. So I want to start with you, Anshul. For you, you've watched, you were doing a lot of in-person stuff before, then you come online, now you're starting to see it change. For you, what has been the biggest shift in corporate training over the last 2 years?
I think the biggest shift is that as much as we like the in-person events, the unimaginable time that we spend doing in-person events have drastically reduced when we go online. We as a company have also been able to take our 6 to 8 hours of in-person events and literally condense them into 4 hours of impactful, powerful online training. So it's fascinating how powerful and intense online events can be.
Yeah, and when we do that as well, like we look at condensing it down to 4 hours. I mean, we don't have to worry about the lunch break. We don't have to worry about the 20 minutes in between. We can also control the communication a bit. So when we think about the way we've changed our communication and online training, what sort of things do you think we can bring into the in-person training that are going to allow us to keep those 4-hour trainings rather than keep everyone there for 6, 7, 8 hours a day when they've also got other busy aspects to do in their
I think the one thing we learned with online events is literally measuring our words, which we would not do with in-person events. We would go on and on and on. But with online, there were strict time schedules. We have to be 4 hours and that's about it. So I think that's the one big learning that we can bring in our in-person events, where we're measuring what we are supposed to deliver. And also a bit of interaction, because with online trainings, it was so easy to get everything in the chat box. You need a yes, you need a no, put it in the chat box. So I think we are seeing that shift where we're able to bring that same sense of interaction even in our in-person events, where earlier we would see facilitators standing for 2 hours and just doing a one-way presentations. But now that is changing, and even today we saw a lot of interaction with our audience. So that's the shift that we're all starting to see.
Yeah, it's really important. Like how the cool thing about online is we've been able to get the collective thoughts of everyone in the room instantaneously, real time. But when we're in person, we've got to ask a question and wait for people to answer. So how can we incorporate that instantaneous thinking of everyone in the room while also being able to open mic? And I think, we've got some strategies that we're about to implement as well, where, say, we've actually got software in the room and each person can have their phone or device there. We give them a link, they go in, and we project the second screen up on the wall. And the second screen is actually just running the chat. So every time we ask a question, everyone can quickly type it. We'll open mic to 1 or 2 people to go deeper into something. But it means everyone is engaged and interacting. It means everyone understands what everyone else is thinking.
Yeah.
That is something we missed before, which I think is really powerful going forward. And there are software, I think, now where you can actually integrate it into the slides, so it'll split screen as well. It's okay, but I think that can be developed. Kartik, for you, in person, we saw a lot of people who would just facilitate. One person would stand up and facilitate a group of 20 for a whole day. For you, what have you noticed in what we've been doing in that group facilitation model that is changing the game when it comes to corporate training?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because when one facilitator facilitating one room is a challenge, 3 to 5 facilitators facilitating one room is a much bigger challenge. But that's where the entire diversity and inclusion comes in, and not just from that perspective, but various ideas get seat at the table. How can a team of 3 to 5 facilitators conduct one program that typically a one facilitator conducts? So the learning becomes very packed for everybody, because there is 3 to 5 minds at work, and this team now has to perform like a cricket team. It's all in sync with each other, and they have to complement each other's plays, and it's very challenging on the go, because if it's just one player playing it, they can play as they like it with some level of audience feedback perhaps. But when it's 5 players playing it, you have to be able to pick up what the other person is leaving behind. You have to be able to add what other person could not perhaps add. You have to lead on with what they left with, and so many other elements which make the experience far more richer, and all of that when condensed in 3 to 4 hours timeline, attending it is like orchestra, like you have that experience of transcendence where you're literally losing yourself in that training. And why can't trainings be like orchestra?
Yeah, I think it's really, really good, and it allows you to take people into small group, personalized feedback sessions rather than, all right, we've got 20 people in the room, I want you to have a discussion, you have a discussion, you have a discussion, all right, or we all have one discussion together. Now we can actually get a facilitator in there to guide and facilitate the conversation, give feedback if it's something they're presenting, etc., so that they can grow fast. And even for us, we've found too, by doing that team facilitation model, that tight feedback loop, not only for the participants, but for the facilitators, because afterwards, we go straight into a military-style debrief where it's gems and opportunities for 30 minutes. And it's not just your lower level feedback you might get from a client or a participant in regards to the way you're facilitating. Yes, they give valuable feedback on whether it's contextualized, whether it was relevant, but the actual way they're facilitating, because they're all at a high level, they can give each other feedback that takes them to the next level. And that is, I think, a big game changer in the way that corporate training and training will be done in the future. And we're not the only ones doing it, but I think we'll see that. Just a last one, I think, to kind of finish off on here. With the costs of in-person training a lot more expensive than online, and both in price and also resources, what sort of training, just a quick one here really fast for both of you, what sort of things do you think we'll see in training that will remain, can be done really well online, there's no need to go in person, and what sort of things do you think need to be in person?
I think, in my opinion, it's just a personal choice. We've seen in the last couple of years, every single thing is possible online. And just today, we've tried a hybrid model as well. We zoomed in Sam, and we are here in person. So in my opinion, all team trainings, whether it is leadership roles, whether it is well-being, whether it is any other sort of training, everything can be done online. And that comes with its own advantages, like we can get access to Craig much more easier when he's online as compared to flying him down all the way from Australia for an in-person event. So you get access to global leaders when it's online, and I think it comes with major advantages, and it is here to stay.
What about you, Karthik?
So Craig, the thing is, I am in the most high-touch profession that you can imagine. I'm a psychologist, right? I'm the tissue guy. When people cry, I hand over a tissue. So in COVID, the most amazing thing that I have seen is 70 to 80% of my counseling sessions have moved online. And I now have clients from, you name the countries like US, Abu Dhabi, Japan, and you can name 10, 15 other countries. So if such high-touch profession can deliver results online, then there is no reason at all why I think that we can't deliver trainings online. And it's very, very effective, because if I have to go and train in Singapore, all I have to do is fire my laptop. That's it. I don't need a visa, I don't need to travel, I don't need any of this. Makes it so much more efficient to access the best minds all across the planet and cross-pollinate as well. Like, you can get a trainer from India, you can get a trainer from Singapore, you can get a trainer from Australia, and combine them all in one room and make an amazing learning journey happen. And at the end of the day, if we look at the core objective of training, there has to be something that the participant walks away with, some great learning, some difference that was made that day. So if we look at it from that standpoint, I think the objective is getting met 100%. So maybe just for the connection's sake, maybe 10% offline, but 90% online for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think we'll see, obviously, where you need to do some team building in larger groups and things like that where they need to network. That's great to bring them together. But if it's more human skills and certain things you will need to develop, then take the efficiencies you can online. I think it's really important. we'll have some questions right at the end, but we're going to bring on one more session before we wrap up for today. Let's give Anchal and Kartik a big round of applause, and thank you. One of the hottest topics over the last few years has been around emotional intelligence. If we're going to understand our people and help create greater culture, how can we develop and enhance and enable our emotional intelligence more effectively? How can we have greater awareness? And I'm going to please welcome back to the stage to talk to you on how we can use that emotional intelligence in this people and culture space, Vanita Chowdhury.
Thank you so much, Craig, and good evening. I know it's end of the day, and thanks, Craig. So, what is that one skill that is guaranteed to give you success, money, business, clients, and a happy life? Wow, sounds so nice, all these words. Honestly, what is that one skill? Any idea, anyone? Obviously, Craig introduced it as in emotional intelligence. It's actually, sorry, yeah, go ahead. I get that. He says emotional intelligence, you say people skill, what else? Empathy, of course. Anything else? Come on, you lovely ladies. Human-centeredness. Wow, Kavita, that's a brilliant word indeed. In fact, every time I speak about EI to corporates, and the moment I say EI, it's like switch off. Oh, don't get that. But when I say, hey, would you want less attrition? You want more productivity? Do you want more connection? Do you want employee loyalty? Do you want employment engagement? And they say, yeah, I need it all. I say, buddy, that is what is EI all about. That is it. In fact, I should share with you. So I've been an EI practitioner professionally for the last decade, but I fell in love with this word in 1995 when I graduated. That's when Daniel Goleman's book released called Emotional, where he broke all myth that IQ is the most needed skill. It was so tough to get that book in Bangalore, Gangaram's. I had to place an order to get one, and I still remember that. And that's where my love affair fell with that concept. But today it's a skill. It's no more a trait. It's no more than genes. It's actually something you can learn. All right? Now, why is it so critical for business entrepreneurs like you and HR leaders like you seated right here? A lot of studies in the past decade has proven that EI is one of the most critical skills you've got to have as a leader. The World Economic Forum, you look at all their reports in the last 5 years, till 2025 they have released. Top skills needed for you to be in a job. You can't miss EI. Take their 2018, take their 2020, take their 2022 and 2025. Everything talks about EI. In fact, when COVID happened, the Marriott CEO, Arnie, came on video for his employees. And the hotel industry was badly hit with COVID. Terribly, I can't even say the word bad. It was like a tsunami for the hotel industry. And Arnie actually was diagnosed with cancer. He was in the last stages of his life. And he had to let go many of his employees because of this pandemic. He comes on the video. And if you have the opportunity to watch that on YouTube, please do. And you find this gentleman talking about the relationship and nothing to do with a brand or a logo or anything else. The bond he created with his team, even in that most dire situation. And I am a Marriott member for the last 12, 13 years, and I live only in their hotels wherever I travel, so I know people very closely. And I can vouch, not a single person quit, even if there was no salary being paid in full. So what can you do as a leader to develop EI? Is it developable? The answer is yes, of course. So here's what I'm going to really tell you. First thing is self-reflection. Every journey begins with you. You got to know who you are really deep. And that's, for me, is self-reflection. It starts with you. Once you're clear about yourself is when you can actually go reach someone else, right? And that's awareness of others. I'm sure all of you have flown at least once in your life. Yes? Yes. What is the announcement? The beautiful air hostess in a lovely voice says, or a man who's hosting that day's flight say, when it comes to the oxygen mask, anyone knows? Even if your children, the most loved possession of our life sitting next to us, they say, hello, first put yours first before you get help us. That's it. If you as a leader are not aware and you don't even have your own oxygen mask, how can you even think of helping others? And that's what starts with you and then others. And both these lead into something called building trust and empathy. I don't remember the leader, how much money and bonus and hike they gave me in the last 21 years of my corporate life. But I still do remember the bosses who stood by me when I had tough times, when I couldn't perform, when I had bad day in the family, when somebody passed away. I still remember, I became a mother after 10 years of my marriage. So you can imagine having a baby after a decade. I had, as it is, a lot of pressure from everyone, like, oh my God, you're going to have a baby. And for me, it was like, just get him out or her safely. That's it, I'm done. And then within 6 months, I had to, come back to work. Imagine a little baby in Mumbai. And I have to go to Ahmedabad to work for training. And I get a call from my husband saying, hey, my son Adrian is not keeping well. I'm concerned. Imagine on the phone he says, my son is unwell and I'm concerned. My first thing is now I'm delivering a session like this. The emotions all switched off. It's of concern. And in the tea break, I see my bosses call me 5 times. She generally never calls when we are in sessions. She called me 5 times. And I pick up the phone and she says, are you in Ahmedabad? I say, yes. I say, why? You know that there's a concern. One of your friends told me there's a problem at home. I just want you to pack and leave. Let the training be. We'll see that later. And I was like, are you saying this to me? She says, yes, of course. Forget the money, forget the cost. Just come back because even if you're there, you're not fully there. It just doesn't make sense. But luckily, thanks to my good doctor in Mumbai, I still owe it to her. She was able to manage my son for the day and I flew in after the session got over. Even today, after so many, it's almost 13 years my son was born. I still remember that example vividly because that made a huge impact in me. And honestly, when you look back of your life, if you're celebrating your 90th birthday, when you really look back, I don't think it really matters how much money you gave to people. What really matters is what impact have you left on people? Who have you touched? What is the difference you have made in someone's life? So before we go in longer, which I'm not going to do that, I have very few quick 7 strategies that I want you to quickly do. And for this, I really want you to do a little bit of activity. So let me give you quickly, firstly, name your feelings daily. How aware of your feelings are you? So can you just look at person behind you, next to you, and share quickly top 5 feelings from morning 9 o'clock till now, what feelings are going in the last 12 hours? Can you just quickly look around and quickly share? As many feelings you can remember from morning 9 till now. Come on, give it a try. You can tell me or you can tell her. Please come, get up. Yeah, of course. Quickly share with each other, just the feelings. And just count it, okay? Count it. Come on, another 20 seconds. 20 seconds, come on. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. All right, do you all have a number? How many feelings could you? Totally 10? 10? Okay, how many could you remember? 5? 5. More than 10 together or alone? or you're in that bliss zone. I love it. I think we should catch up after this call to get that little secret out of you. Actually speaking, I do workshop for children on EI. So that's my passion. That's what I love giving back. Can you take a guess? And her daughter comes to my class, so she knows what I do. Can you take a guess, anyone in the room, how many emotions or feelings a 10-year, 11-year-old child can say? Sorry? Easily 25, non-stop. They just know it, they feel it, they are in it. That's why it's very important for you. How do you do it? Very simple. Throughout the day, every time you get an opportunity, just ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? That's it. How am I feeling right now? And the more you're able to articulate your emotion, you nail it. Like if my son comes and says, Mama, I am angry, I don't get it. But if he comes and says, Mama, I am actually feeling annoyed, I get it, that annoyance. If he comes and tells me I'm frustrated, I get it. And same in the organizations. When you articulate and label the feeling, the conversations become deeper and meaningful. Yeah? Increase your joy. Now this is tough one, but simple example to say is that joy is much, much more than just happiness. All right? So what can you do to create joy in your life? Because you are resonating your energy to your leader, your teams. And hence, I'm not asking you to be in 24/7 joy, bliss state. However, do something that makes you happy every day. If you like music, listen to it, get that joy space. You like reading books, which I know my good friend does. Read books to get into that zone. You want to do Zumba, just do it. The whole idea is, do you know what gets you that joy? Do you know what moment, what relationship, what connect gets that joy which you thoroughly enjoy? Third one is choose positive self-regulation. Especially during COVID, lot of organizations and families were devastated with deaths and whatnot. Many of them either have gone into alcohol, drug abuse, or things which are not conducive. So one of the things when change or conflict or devastating things happen, try to have conversations. Try to have someone whom you really believe or don't even know, like counseling, like Karthik does counseling. But the key thing is look at positive self-regulatory ideas like connecting to people or having a zone where you have a group that can help each other. Manage your self-talk. What do you talk to your brain? Do you say, I'm terrible, I'm pathetic, how can I be so silly? Or you say, oh my God, I'm so awesome, I am the best. Self-affirmation, looking at yourself, there's none like you because everybody else is taken. So what is the talk you're telling yourself? I'm a pathetic leader, or are you saying that I'm a leader in learning process? I may not know everything, but I'm there. And what you self-talk is what you behave. Your thoughts drive your action, behavior, and decisions. Learn to listen. I think we spoke a lot about this. I'm not going to go back here, but I think the power of listening is amazing. Amazing, to say the least. What can you do to listen? Simple. In every time you're having meetings and conversation, ask yourself, how many minutes did I speak? And how many minutes did I really listen? So have this conscious clock, or keep someone in your team who will give you that, you've spoken a lot now, some kind of a methodology that will tell you what you can do. Move towards relationship. I think this is one of the basic one, is have great relationship with self, self-love, self-compassion, because that's what would lead into greater relationship with your team. If your team member is not coming up to you to say what is the problem they have, that means you just don't have that relationship with them. If nobody talks in your team and there's no conflict, it's like an ECG with a deadbeat. You need to have something going on which gets into relationship, and emotional intelligence exactly does that. And the last thing that I want to tell you all is, as you start today, after this meet, ask yourself in a day, how much can you focus on others? And that is nothing but observation skill. And you can only observe another person if you are calm, composed, and your EI is manageable. If you have high emotions all over, obviously you're oblivious to people who are actually trying to tell you that there's a problem with me, and you're like, yeah. So that's it from my end. And just to focus to tell you that Speakers Institute Corporate, we are looking at doing a lot of workshops related to mindfulness and emotional intelligence, and we would love to take this a little more deeper if you're interested. And any questions, happy to take it after the session, Craig.
Thank you, Vanita.
Thank you.
Now, I think, obviously today we've taken you through on a bit of a journey, and we've touched different aspects and hopefully challenged you to think in a little bit differently around the future of leading people and culture. But the one thing that is so important to understand, and it came through it a couple of times there around the talk of different aspects of being calm and controlled and composed as a leader when we are speaking with our employees, when we are trying to make decisions on change in the people and culture space. We need to be that leader who has the greatest influence or power, so to speak, in the room. Now, if I put heart rate monitors on every single person in the room, in most cases, the person who has the greatest influence and the greatest control will actually have the lowest heart rate. So how can you lower your pulse? How can you slow it down so you can control the energy of the room? So by lowering your pulse, we first starts with breathing. And how can you control and slow the breathing rate down and deepen it through your belly button? If we breathe through our chest, we set off the stress receptors. If we breathe through our belly button and go deep through our diaphragm, we start to get the body to relax and open up, and it opens up our mind. If you ever feel yourself struggling to speak, or you're kind of going down a rabbit hole going, what do I say next? Just stop and breathe deep and slow it down. Now, once we start to breathe and drop that down, it then lowers our pulse, which then allows us to control the energy of the room. If you want to have great influence in your life as a leader, in making positive change in your people and culture strategy, you must have to work on lowering your pulse. I'm pretty fortunate because people always ask me, how can you stay calm, composed and controlled and create that space where you feel calm and have that psychological safety around you? It always comes down to lowering your pulse. And I do have something of a bit of an advantage over most people in that my resting heart rate is 32, and at night when I sleep it goes down to 24. I may have been an athlete in my previous time. So for you, I encourage you to do that. How can you think about your gravity of leadership? Are you creating a gravitational push today or gravitational pull, and keeping to develop that sense of connectedness and belonging that's so important to cultures and thriving places of collaboration and people doing amazing work in the workplace? How can you take a human-centric, heart-centered approach to the way that you lead your people so that we can continue to inspire people to want to do more in a way that enhances their own sense of worth, in a way that creates something special and a legacy for the future generations they will never meet? At Speakers Institute Corporate, we inspire great leaders through solving ineffective communication and decision-making in small medium enterprises right through to Fortune 100 companies. If this has sparked an interest in you and you want to have a further discussion or get a greater taste in what we do, we have a number of opportunities, whether it be a monthly 30-minute thought leadership series. And by the way, the next one on the first Wednesday of June, I believe it's the 1st of June, which will be 7:30 India Standard Time. It's a 30-minute session on inclusive language. It's a powerful session. I haven't seen anyone else deliver it in the way that Narissa does. So it's a great session. We also put on professional development for individuals, so you can send along one employee or you can come along and try it yourself and then start the conversation to what we can do inside your organization. Or you can have a discovery call with us now and we can dive into what gaps you might have in your learning development, what problems you may need to solve, whether it be in culture, whether it be in well-being, leadership, or even communication or presenting to C-suite. Please feel free to give us a call. We are going to be available now if you want to speak with us after the session. We do have a gift for you. Not only do you get a pamphlet, which is on your seat, and if you want to take a couple for any of your colleagues, please feel free to do so. At the back, as you walk out, you'll get a nice gift bag, and Sam has especially sent up a delivery of his story showing book that you can read, take away in the amazing work that he does. Obviously, you could see some of him doing story showing online, where he takes you into the story rather than telling you story. It's an amazing book to help you grow with your business storytelling and the way that you show and share stories rather than tell people what to do. I look forward to seeing you going out into this world and taking the knowledge from tonight and continuing to be inspiring great leaders in your workplace. Thank you very much to all of you. A big round of applause to yourselves. I'd like to just bring the team up now, and we'll just a big thank you to all of our team, to Kartik, to Juvi, Vanita, Anchal, Mariha, who's out the front. Let's give a big round of applause. Thank you very much for all of you for coming. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And just a note, I'd only met Kartik before in person until today. So I got to meet Vanita, Juvi, Anchal, and Mariha for the very first time, and I'm sure they all can contest. We have been online the entire time that I've known them. Today felt like we had known each other in person for years, decades. That's the greater sense of belonging that we create and the connectedness that we always integrate into our workplace. And so, thank you to all of you.